The space station called Harmony Point floated in the darkness between three star systems. It was neutral ground where species who hated each other could meet and talk instead of fight. Today it held the most important meeting in 100 years, and everything was going wrong. Corporal Danny Cole stood at attention in the briefing room while his commanding officer explained the situation. Danny was 26 years old with brown hair and a face that nobody remembered 5 minutes after meeting him. He was not tall. He was not strong. He had no medals and no special training. He was simply a Marine who showed up on time and did what he was told. "The Queen is on this station," the officer said. "Her entire royal guard has been poisoned. All 12 of them are in medical bays fighting for their lives. Someone wants her dead before she can speak at the summit tomorrow." Danny listened without expression. He knew about the. They were in species with bodies covered in crystal-like shells that shimmered in different colors. Their queen had ruled for 400 years and commanded an empire of 1 trillion beings. She was coming to the summit to prevent a war with the Collective, a reptilian species known for their aggression and their hatred of the. "They have requested human protection," the officer continued. "They trust us because we have no political stake in their conflict. Earth needs this alliance, Cole. We need to show them that humans keep their word." Danny nodded slowly. "How many guards are we sending?" The officer's face tightened. "One, we are sending 1 guard, you." For a moment Danny thought he had misheard. 1 guard for the most important being in the quadrant. 1 guard against assassins who had already taken down 12 elite warriors. "Sir, with respect, shouldn't we send a squad, or at least a specialist team?" "Everyone else is assigned to perimeter security for the summit. They specifically requested a single guard for close protection. They believe a larger force would draw too much attention." The officer leaned forward. "I know this seems impossible, Cole, but you were available and you have a clean record. No politics, no scandals, no complications. You are exactly what they asked for." Danny understood. He was being sent because he was nobody. If he failed and the Queen died, Earth could claim they had done their best with limited resources. If he succeeded, Earth would gain a powerful ally. Either way, the politicians would find a way to benefit. But none of that mattered to Danny. He had been given an order. He would follow it. "When do I start?" he asked. 1 hour later, Danny stood outside the Queen's diplomatic quarters on the station's upper level. The corridor was wide and elegant, with walls made of some pale material that glowed softly. Alien delegates walked past in both directions, most of them ignoring the human in the simple uniform standing by the door. Ambassador Hanover came out to meet him. The ambassador was tall and thin, with a shell that shifted between deep blue and purple as he moved. His eyes were large and dark, and they looked at Danny with obvious disappointment. "This is what Earth sends us?" Han asked. His voice was like wind chimes, musical but cold. One small human with no reputation. Danny met the ambassador's gaze without flinching. "I am Corporal Danny Cole, sir. I have been assigned to protect the Queen. I will do my duty." Han made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Our royal guards trained for 50 years each. They could kill a dozen enemies with their bare hands, and you think you can replace them?" "No, sir," Danny said honestly. "I cannot replace them, but I can stand here and make sure nobody gets through that door." The ambassador stared at him for a long moment, then turned away with a dismissive wave of his thin arm. "Do as you wish, human. I doubt it will matter." Danny took his position beside the door and did not move. The hours passed slowly. Delegates from a dozen species walked through the corridor, some glancing at him with curiosity, others with amusement, and a few with something like pity. The delegation passed by twice, their scaled faces twisted in expressions that Danny could not read but suspected were mocking. One of a commander named according to his uniform markings, stopped directly in front of Danny and looked down at him. Was massive, nearly 7 feet tall, with dark green scales and eyes like yellow fire. "A human guard," said, his voice a low rumble. "How amusing. Do you know what will happen to you if you try to stop someone like me?" Danny looked up at the towering alien. His heart was beating fast, but his voice stayed calm. "I guess we would find out, sir." Stared at him for several seconds, then laughed and walked away. The sound echoed down the corridor like rocks grinding together. Inside her chambers, Queen watched the exchange through her viewing screen. She had lived for 4 centuries and seen countless species rise and fall. She had survived 17 assassination attempts and 3 civil wars. She knew how to judge the worth of a being by watching them face pressure. The human had not flinched. He had not backed down. He had stood his ground against a creature twice his size and simply accepted whatever would come. Interesting, she thought, very interesting. The Queen touched a control on her chair and opened a communication channel to Ambassador Han. "Tell me about this human," she said. "There is nothing to tell, my Queen. He is nobody, a low-ranking soldier with no achievements and no special abilities. Earth has insulted us by sending such a creature." The Queen watched Danny through the screen. He had returned to his position and stood perfectly still, watching everything and everyone who passed by. "Perhaps," she said softly, "or perhaps they have sent us exactly what we need." She closed the channel and continued to watch the human who had been assigned to guard her life. Outside in the corridor, unaware that he was being observed, Danny Cole began his watch. He did not know that assassins were already planning their attack. He did not know that the next few days would change how the entire galaxy viewed his species. He only knew that he had a job to do, and he would do it until he could not stand anymore. The silence of his post wrapped around him like a blanket. Somewhere in the station, enemies were gathering. Somewhere in the shadows, death was waiting. Danny Cole stood his ground and watched the corridor. His duty had begun. 48 hours had passed since Danny Cole took his position outside the Queen's chambers. He had not slept. He had not sat down. He had eaten only 2 protein bars and drunk water from a bottle he kept in his belt pouch. His legs ached and his eyes burned, but he did not move from his post. The alien delegates who passed through the corridor had stopped ignoring him. Now they stared openly, whispering to each other in languages Danny could not understand. He heard the word human repeated many times, always in tones of confusion or disbelief. A group of diplomats, small furry creatures with large ears, stopped nearby and watched him for nearly an hour. One of them finally approached and asked in broken English, "You are not sleeping for 2 days?" "No," Danny said. "This is not possible. All beings need sleep." Danny shrugged slightly, his eyes still scanning the corridor. "I will sleep when my duty is done." They looked at each other with wide eyes and hurried away, chattering rapidly in their own language. Ambassador Han appeared later that evening, his crystal shell now showing colors of orange and red that Danny had learned meant irritation. The ambassador stood in front of Danny and crossed his thin arms. "Why are you still here?" Han demanded. "I was assigned to protect the Queen, sir." "You have not requested relief. You have not asked for food or rest quarters. Our sensors show you have not moved more than 3 steps from this door in 2 days. Why?" Danny considered the question carefully before answering. "Because I gave my word. Where I come from, a promise is a promise. I said I would protect the Queen. I will protect her." Han's colors shifted to something Danny could not identify. The ambassador opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. Without another word, he turned and walked back into the Queen's chambers. A few minutes later, the door opened again. This time it was not the ambassador who emerged. Queen was smaller than Danny had expected. She stood perhaps 5 feet tall, her crystal shell glowing with soft white and silver light. Her movements were graceful and slow, and her large dark eyes held an intelligence that made Danny feel like she could see right through him. "You are the human called Danny Cole," she said. Her voice was like music, but deeper and richer than the ambassador's. Danny straightened even more. "Yes, Your Majesty. My ambassador tells me you have not rested since you arrived. He believes this is foolish. He believes you will collapse and be useless when danger comes." The Queen tilted her head slightly. "What do you believe?" Danny thought about lying. He thought about claiming that he was fine, that he could go for days more without rest. But something about the Queen's eyes made him want to tell the truth. "I believe my body will fail before my will does," he said. "When I will fall facing your enemies. Until then, I will stand." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then she gestured toward her chambers. "Come inside. I wish to speak with you properly, not through a doorway like strangers." Danny hesitated. "Your Majesty, if I leave my post, anyone could approach the door. I have sensors and cameras. I have locked barriers that can seal this corridor in seconds. For the next few minutes, we can speak safely." She paused. "Please, I have questions." Danny followed her inside. The Queen's chambers were larger than he expected, filled with strange furniture and soft lighting that changed colors slowly. She settled into a chair that seemed to wrap around her body and gestured for Danny to sit as well. He remained standing. "You humans confuse us," the Queen said. "You are not the strongest species. You are not the fastest your bodies are soft and fragile. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. And yet every species in this quadrant speaks of humans with caution. Some speak with fear. Why?" Danny had never thought about it before. He was just a Marine from a small town in Kansas who had joined the military because he did not know what else to do with his life. He was not a philosopher or a scientist. "I do not know, Your Majesty," he admitted. "We are just people. We do what needs to be done." "And what needs to be done here? Why do you sacrifice your comfort for a being you have never met? A being whose species once considered humans too primitive to contact?" Danny met her eyes. "Because you needed help. Because someone is trying to kill you. Because I was asked to keep you safe, and so I will keep you safe." The Queen leaned forward slightly. "Even though you might die." "Everyone dies, Your Majesty. The only choice we have is what we die for." Something changed in the Queen's expression. Her shell flickered through several colors before settling on a deep, warm gold that Danny had not seen before. "I have received messages," she said quietly. "The assassins who poisoned my guards are still on the station. They will try again. My sources say they will strike within the next day." She paused. "I am expected to die before I can speak at the summit. Without my testimony, war will begin. Billions will die." Danny felt his exhaustion fade as his focus sharpened. "Do you know who they are? How many?" "3, possibly 4, professional killers from the syndicate. They specialize in eliminating protected targets." The Queen's voice dropped. "They have never failed." Danny nodded slowly. "Then I guess they are going to fail for the first time." The Queen made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You say this so calmly. Do you not understand? These are the most dangerous assassins in the quadrant. They have killed beings protected by armies. And I am one human with a sidearm and 2 days without sleep." Danny shrugged. "Sounds like a fair fight to me." The Queen stared at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head slowly. "You are either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," Danny admitted. He returned to his post outside the door. The corridor was empty now, the delegates having retired to their quarters for the night cycle. The lights had dimmed to simulate evening, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Danny checked his weapon and settled back into his position. Somewhere on this station, killers were preparing to make their move. They were probably resting, eating, sharpening their blades and checking their plans. Danny had no plans. He had no backup and no special weapons. He only had himself and a promise he intended to keep. The night stretched out before him, dark and full of danger. He waited. The third night came with a heavy silence that pressed down on the station like a weight. Danny had now been awake for over 70 hours. His body screamed for rest. His muscles trembled with exhaustion. His vision sometimes blurred at the edges, and he had to blink hard to clear it. But he did not move from his post. The corridor lights had dimmed to their lowest setting. Most of the station's inhabitants were asleep in their quarters. The only sounds were the soft hum of air recyclers and the distant pulse of the station's power core. Danny's eyes moved constantly, scanning every shadow, every doorway, every dark corner where danger might hide. His training had taught him to watch for patterns, to notice when something was wrong even if he could not immediately say what it was. At 3 in the morning by station time, he noticed something wrong. A shadow moved at the far end of the corridor. Not much, just a slight shift in the darkness that should not have happened. Danny's hand moved slowly to his sidearm, but he did not draw it yet. He kept watching, his tired eyes focused on that spot. Another movement, this time from the opposite direction. A maintenance panel in the wall shifted slightly, as if someone was pushing it from inside. They were coming from 2 directions, maybe more. Danny drew his weapon and pressed his back against the wall beside the Queen's door. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady. Fear was a luxury he could not afford right now. The first assassin came from the maintenance shaft. It was a creature Danny did not recognize, tall and thin with gray skin and 4 arms. Each hand held a plasma blade that glowed with deadly blue light. The assassin moved without sound, flowing through the shadows like smoke. The second came from the far corridor. This one was different, shorter and broader, with scales that shifted color to match the walls behind it. A chameleon killer, nearly invisible until it was too late. Danny counted 2. The Queen had said 3 or 4. The third dropped from the ceiling. It happened fast. The ceiling panel burst open and a dark shape fell toward Danny, blade extended for a killing strike. Danny threw himself sideways, feeling the plasma blade slice through the air where his head had been a moment before. He hit the ground rolling and came up firing. His first shot caught the ceiling assassin in the shoulder, spinning it around with a spray of dark blood. His second shot missed as the chameleon killer closed the distance with terrifying speed. Danny blocked the blade's strike with his forearm guard. The plasma edge burned through the metal and cut into his flesh. Pain exploded up his arm, but he ignored it. He grabbed the assassin's wrist with his wounded arm and shoved his pistol against its chest with the other. He fired twice. The assassin fell. The 4-armed creature was on him before he could turn. 2 blades came at him from different angles, too fast to dodge completely. He twisted away from the first, but the second opened a gash across his ribs. Blood soaked through his uniform as he stumbled backward. The assassin pressed forward, all 4 arms working in deadly coordination. Danny blocked what he could and took the cuts he could not avoid. His body was failing. His reactions were too slow. 70 hours without sleep had stolen his edge. But he did not fall. He did not retreat. The assassin drove a blade toward his heart. Danny caught the strike on his pistol, the weapon sparking and dying as the plasma edge cut through it. He was disarmed now, facing a killer with 4 blades and nothing but his bare hands. The creature made a sound like laughter. "Foolish human, you should have run." Danny spat blood onto the floor. Running was never an option. He charged. The assassin was not expecting it. What kind of creature charges towards certain death? What kind of being attacks when it has already lost? A human does. Danny took a blade through his left shoulder as he closed the distance. He felt it punch through muscle and scrape against bone. He kept moving. His right hand found the assassin's throat and squeezed with every ounce of strength his exhausted body could produce. The assassin tried to pull back, tried to bring its other blades around for a killing strike. But Danny held on. He held on even as another blade cut into his side. He held on even as his vision started to go dark around the edges. Something cracked under his fingers. The assassin made a choking sound and its arms went weak. Danny did not let go until the creature stopped moving completely. He dropped the body and turned to face the third assassin, the one he had wounded earlier. It was trying to crawl away, leaving a trail of blood on the polished floor. Danny limped after it. His legs barely worked. His left arm hung useless at his side. Blood dripped from a dozen wounds, leaving red spots on the white floor. He caught the assassin by its collar and dragged it back toward the Queen's door. Then he collapsed against the wall, keeping one hand on the wounded killer. "Security," he said into his communicator, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need security at the Queen's quarters. 3 hostiles down, 1 alive for questioning." The response came back immediately, voices full of confusion and alarm. Danny did not listen to them. He focused on staying conscious, on keeping his grip on the surviving assassin, on making sure no one else approached that door. Station security arrived 7 minutes later. They found the corridor looking like a battlefield. 2 dead assassins lay in spreading pools of blood. A third was pinned to the floor by a human who looked more dead than alive. Danny looked up at them with eyes that could barely focus. "Someone want to take this one? My arm is getting tired." The security team took the prisoner. A medic rushed to Danny's side, already pulling out emergency supplies. Danny pushed the medic's hands away. "Check the Queen first," he said. "Sir, you are bleeding out. You need immediate treatment." "Check the Queen first." The medic hesitated, then sent another team member to verify the Queen's safety. A moment later, the all-clear came back. Queen was unharmed, still secure in her chambers. Only then did Danny allow the medic to begin treating his wounds. As they worked on him, as they sealed cuts and stopped bleeding and pumped painkillers into his system, Danny kept his eyes on the Queen's door. He did not let himself rest. Not yet. His duty was not done. Inside her chambers, watching through her security screens, Queen sat in stunned silence. She had witnessed the entire fight. She had seen a single human, exhausted and outmatched, charge directly at death rather than abandon his post. For the first time in 400 years, she did not know what to say. The news spread across the station like fire through dry grass. By morning, every delegate, every diplomat, every worker and guard on Harmony Point knew what had happened in the corridor outside the Queen's chambers. A single human had fought off 3 professional assassins. A single human, after 3 days without sleep, had killed 2 of the most dangerous beings in the quadrant and captured a third. A single human had done what armies had failed to do. The captured assassin talked quickly once security began asking questions. The collective had hired the syndicate to eliminate Queen before she could speak at the summit. Without her testimony about their border attacks, war could have been blamed on the instead. The delegation everything, but the evidence was clear. Their plan had failed because of one exhausted Marine from Earth who simply refused to quit. Danny sat in a medical bay while doctors finished treating his wounds. His shoulder had been badly damaged by the plasma blade, and his ribs would take weeks to fully heal. The cuts on his arm and side had been sealed, but they still throbbed with pain whenever he moved. Ambassador Han came to see him. The ambassador's crystal shell was showing colors Danny had never seen before, shifting patterns of deep blue and silver that seemed to pulse with emotion. "I owe you an apology," Han said quietly. "When you arrived, I thought Earth was mocking us. I thought they sent us someone worthless because they did not care about our Queen's safety." Danny shrugged with his good shoulder. "You were not wrong to think that. I am nobody special, just a soldier doing his job." Han made a sound that might have been a laugh. "If you are what humans consider nobody special, then I fear to imagine what your special soldiers are like." He paused, his colors deepening. "The Queen wishes to speak with you before the summit. She insists on thanking you personally." "That is not necessary," Danny said. "I was just doing my duty." It is necessary to her, and when the Queen of the Empire believes something is necessary, it happens. Han's voice softened. "You saved her life, Danny Cole. You nearly died protecting someone you had never met. That is not something my people will forget." An hour later, Danny stood outside the Queen's chambers once again. He was wearing a fresh uniform, though bandages still bulged under the fabric. A young lieutenant had been assigned to take over guard duty, and the young man kept staring at Danny with something like awe. The door opened, and Danny walked inside. Queen was waiting for him, standing in the center of her chamber rather than seated. Her shell glowed with that deep gold color Danny had seen once before, and her dark eyes held warmth he had not expected. "Danny Cole," she said, "I watched what you did last night. I watched you face 3 killers with nothing but your courage and your bare hands. I watched you take wound after wound and refuse to fall. Your Majesty, I just did what needed to be done." "No," the Queen stepped closer to him. "You did what no one believed could be done. My own people with all our technology and training could not protect me, but you did. One human, one small, soft, fragile human." She reached out and touched his uninjured shoulder gently. "Why?" Danny thought about the question. He thought about his training, his orders, his duty, but none of those answers felt complete. "Because you were in danger," he finally said. "Because someone needed to stand between you and the people who wanted to hurt you. Because that is what we do. Humans, I mean, we protect people, even strangers, even people who look at us and see nothing special." He met her eyes. "We are not the strongest or the fastest. We do not have armor or claws or special abilities. But we have this: when something matters, we do not give up. We do not quit. We keep going until the job is done, or until we cannot move anymore." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I must speak at the summit in 1 hour. I must walk from here to the main chamber, through corridors full of beings who wish me harm. The delegation will be there. They failed to kill me in secret, and some of them may be desperate enough to try something in public." "I will walk with you," Danny said immediately. "You are wounded. You should be resting." "With respect, Your Majesty, I will rest when you are safe in that summit chamber. Until then, I am still your guard." The Queen smiled, a strange expression on her alien face but somehow warm and genuine. "Then let us go, Danny Cole. Let us show the galaxy what happens when a human gives his word." They walked out of the chamber together. The young lieutenant fell in behind them, but Danny barely noticed. His focus was entirely on the corridor ahead, watching for any sign of danger. The first delegates they passed stopped talking mid-sentence, their eyes fixed on Danny, then on the Queen walking beside him. Whispers followed them like ripples in water. More aliens filled the corridor as they approached the main section of the station. Word had spread about what Danny had done. Now everyone wanted to see the human who had fought off 3 assassins with his bare hands. The corridor grew more crowded. Danny moved closer to the Queen, putting himself between her and the masses of alien bodies pressing in around them. His wounds throbbed with every step, but he ignored the pain. Pain was just information. It was not important. They turned a corner and found the delegation blocking the path. Commander stood at the front of the group, his massive form filling the corridor. Behind him were a dozen warriors, all armed, all staring at the approaching Queen with hatred in their yellow eyes. The corridor fell silent, every other being pressed back against the walls, creating a clear path between the Queen and the... Danny did not slow down. He walked forward steadily, the Queen matching his pace at his side. When they were 10 feet from, Danny stopped and stepped in front of her. He did not speak. He did not threaten. He simply stood there, wounded and exhausted, and met the commander's eyes. Stared down at him. The silence stretched out like a held breath. The entire station seemed to be waiting to see what would happen. Danny did not blink. He did not look away. He stood his ground and waited. His hand moved toward his weapon. Danny's hand mirrored the movement, resting on the grip of his sidearm. The two of them faced each other, seconds away from violence. Then stopped. His hand dropped away from his weapon, and slowly, almost painfully, he stepped aside. The rest of the delegation followed, parting like water around a stone. Danny walked forward with the Queen behind him. They passed through the gap in the line without a word being spoken on either side. Danny's eyes never left until they were well past. Behind them the corridor remained silent. No one moved, no one spoke. A single human had just made the most feared warriors in the quadrant back down, without firing a shot. The story would spread across the galaxy within hours. The silence had spread first. The summit chamber was enormous, a great dome of glass and metal that looked out at the stars. Delegates from 40 different species filled the curved rows of seats, all of them watching as Queen took her place at the central podium. Danny stood at the edge of the chamber, his back against the wall where he could see every entrance and exit. His body had finally reached its limit. His vision kept going dark at the edges and his legs trembled with exhaustion, but he stayed on his feet. The Queen was still speaking. His duty was not done. The Queen's voice filled the chamber as she presented her evidence. She spoke of attacks on border worlds, of civilian ships destroyed, of colonies burned. She spoke of the assassination attempt against her own life and the confession of the captured killer. The delegation sat in sullen silence as their crimes were exposed before the entire galaxy. When she finished, the chamber erupted in discussion. Voices rose and fell as delegates debated what should happen next. Some called for war against the others urged restraint and negotiation. Danny did not listen to the arguments. He watched the room, his tired eyes scanning for any threat that might emerge. They were humiliated and desperate. Desperate beings did dangerous things. But no attack came. They sat in their section of the chamber, surrounded by the disapproving stares of every other species present. They knew they were beaten. Their plot had failed because of one stubborn human who would not quit. The vote came an hour later. The Galactic Council condemned the attacks and demanded reparations. War was avoided, but the collective's reputation was destroyed. They would spend decades trying to rebuild the trust they had lost. When the vote concluded, Queen stepped down from the podium. The chamber filled with the sounds of delegates preparing to leave, conversations resuming, normal business returning. Danny pushed himself off the wall and took 2 steps toward the Queen. Then his legs gave out. He fell forward, his exhausted body finally refusing to obey his commands. He expected to hit the cold floor, but instead he felt hands catch him, alien limbs supporting his weight before he could collapse completely. When his vision cleared, he found himself surrounded by. Ambassador Han was on one side, another diplomat on the other, both of them holding him upright with surprising gentleness. "We have you," Han said quietly. "You can rest now, Danny Cole. Your duty is done." Danny tried to protest, tried to say that he was fine, that he could keep going. But the words would not come. His body had finally overruled his will. He let them guide him to a medical transport, and then the darkness took him. Danny woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed on Harmony Point. Sunlight from artificial windows filled the room, and the smell of antiseptic mixed with something floral that he did not recognize. He tried to sit up and found that his shoulder had been properly treated. The wound still ached, but the deep damage had been repaired. His ribs no longer screamed with every breath. Someone had taken very good care of him. "Ah, you are awake." Danny turned his head and found Queen sitting in a chair beside his bed. She wore simple robes instead of formal attire, and her shell glowed with that warm gold color he had come to associate with genuine emotion. "Your Majesty," Danny said, his voice rough from disuse, "you should not be here. What about your security?" The Queen smiled. "I have a full complement of guards waiting outside. My own people now recovered from the poison, along with a squad of human marines your government insisted on providing. Her smile widened. But I wanted to be here when you woke up. I wanted to thank you properly. Danny shook his head. I was just doing my job. Stop saying that. The Queen's voice was gentle but firm. What you did was not normal, it was not expected. You went far beyond what anyone could have asked of you. She reached out and touched his hand. You stood against impossible odds for 3 days without rest. You fought assassins with your bare hands. You walked wounded through a hostile corridor and made an entire delegation bow to your will without speaking a word. That is not just doing a job, Danny Cole. That is being extraordinary. Danny did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as extraordinary. He was just a Marine from Kansas who followed orders and kept his promises. I have spoken with your government, the Queen continued. The Empire is entering into a formal alliance with Earth. Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, technology sharing. Your species will benefit greatly. She paused. But I also have something personal for you. She reached into her robes and a small object that glowed with inner light. It was a crystal, shaped like a star, pulsing with the same gold color as her shell. This is an honor crystal, she said. It is given only to those whom the royal family considers worthy of our deepest respect. In 400 years, I have given perhaps a dozen of these. She pressed it into his hand. You are the first non to ever receive one. Danny looked at the crystal, watching the light pulse gently in his palm. I do not know what to say. Say nothing. Just know that wherever you go in space, you will be welcomed as family. You will never need anything that we can provide. Your children and your children's children will be honored by my people. The Queen stood up and looked down at him with warmth in her dark eyes. You earned this, Danny Cole. Never doubt that. She left the room, her guards falling in around her as she departed. A week later, Danny stood on a platform on Earth, receiving a medal from his commanding officers. The ceremony was formal and official, with cameras recording everything for the news feeds that would broadcast it across human space. He stood at attention while generals spoke about duty and courage and the importance of keeping promises. He saluted when they pinned the medal to his chest. He shook hands and accepted congratulations from people he had never met. But when reporters asked him about his experience, when they pressed him for dramatic stories and heroic feelings, Danny just shrugged. I was given a job to do, he said, so I did it. He returned to regular duty the following month. No special assignments, no promotions beyond what was normal. He was still Corporal Danny Cole, still an ordinary Marine who showed up on time and did what he was told. But something had changed across the galaxy. Ships carrying alien traders would arrive at human stations, and their crews would fall silent when humans walked past. Diplomatic meetings would pause when human delegates entered the room. Species that had once dismissed Earth as primitive now watched humans with something between fear and admiration. The story spread from system to system, growing with each telling. The human who had not slept for 3 days. The human who had fought assassins with his bare hands. The human who had made the mighty back down without speaking a word. And in every telling, the same image emerged. A single human, wounded and exhausted, standing guard over someone who was not his own kind, refusing to yield no matter the cost. It was said that, when a human gave their word, nothing in the galaxy could make them break it. It was said that humans did not know how to surrender. It was said that if you threatened someone a human had promised to protect, you had better be prepared to kill them completely, because they would keep coming until their heart stopped beating. Danny Cole never thought much about his fame. He just kept doing his job, kept showing up on time, kept following orders. But across the galaxy, whenever a human entered a room, silence spread. And everyone remembered why.